Well, welcome back to the Sandwich, our premiere episode, season 2, episode 1. GD, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great and excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this. I got some
Absolutely.
great music to play. I'm excited to hear what you got. Really enjoyed your year-end playlist, which I'm excited to link in the podcast for everyone else. And
Absolutely.
it was a great music year, 2023.
It absolutely was. Tons and tons and tons and tons of really good stuff came out. I like to try to keep abreast of everything that's coming out throughout the year. I always have a little pet peeve for people who are like, "Oh, there's no good music these days." I'm like, "No, there's tons and tons of good music." So I like to try to see what everyone is making and keep track of all of it. And yeah, so I put together a playlist of like probably 6+ hours worth of music that I was listening to throughout the year, kind of in chronological order of when I started listening to it. So we'll link that, and I hope you do the same for your year.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm really excited. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it takes a lot of. I've had people say the same thing. How do you discover artists and bands? And I do think that it takes a lot of work. The tools are out there with Spotify, but and with other YouTube and blogs, but you got to know where to find it. It builds on itself, and
Yeah.
the algorithm can be really limiting, and a lot of people get stuck in a rut. But then when you know how to do you look at similar artists and things like that. I just been, it's incredible to find these artists that have tens of thousands of listeners and to feel like you're supporting them. So it's been
For
cool.
sure. Yeah, I do a lot. I find a lot of folks on Instagram too. Just like pretty much anyone I'm listening to, I'll just follow them, and they'll usually, look at their stories and watch sort of the people that they're following are shouting out. And musicians have good taste in music, I think. So I like kind of going down those rabbit holes as well. And for those of you joining us for the first time via video, we are excited to be trying out season 2 in our YouTube format as well. So hopefully we'll hone in on our skill set and our technical know-how as we go along with this. But thanks for joining us on YouTube as well. We will link in the show notes for this episode if you're listening on Spotify to the video version if you'd like to see that.
Yeah. Well, excited to have you with us. We had some dedicated listeners last year, and hopefully having some of you back and hoping to reach more people. We're just having fun. But last year I think we did a total of 12 episodes. We had listeners sharing, even some of our few listeners sharing songs that they wanted us to play, and I'd love to do more of that, and build some kind of community on YouTube or elsewhere. We're gonna try to amp up our Instagram a little bit. But either way, thanks for listening. Hope you find something that you like this year. Excited to kick this off. We'll be doing this weekly, most weeks, maybe with some exceptions, but yeah, excited to be here.
One thing we wanted to do for this episode, since there's been a little, our podcast has been on vacation, wanted to just end our episode with some tracks that we've been listening to since we finished up season 1. So we will present those without any interruption on our end after we are done with our typical format of sharing a song or two each. And so to kick us off, JD, what do you got first for us? What is the slice of bread of our sandwich?
Absolutely. So I'm going to play a song from Buch Meek. His album Haunted Mountain held a special place for me last year, and it was on my year-end playlist for sure. He's the lead guitarist from Big Thief, who I absolutely love. Saw them in concert last year at the Anthem here in DC, and I would say, in contrast to Big Thief, somewhat more, I would say, like anxious and fraught lyricism. I think Adrian Lenker, the vocalist of Big Thief, has an incredible voice, but it's very, very different than Buch's lyricism on his solo work. And his music has a calmer, almost like swaggering kind of tone to it. It was really relaxing, and when I was listening back to the stuff at the end of the year, it brought back some really poignant memories for me, and it really stayed with me throughout the year. 2 weeks ago, he released an alternate version of one of my favorite songs off of Haunted Mountain. The original version was called, oh my God, I'm going to totally butcher this, Cyclades. I don't know, it's a Greek word. I should look it up. I've butchered so many words on this podcast. The song, the single this week is called, or 2 weeks ago, is called Cuero Dudes. Largely the same song structure, but different verses, and then a sick new guitar solo at the end. And it was like very odd to me to hear the same song, but with different lyrics. He said on Instagram, "I'd like to keep writing verses for this song for the rest of my life," which I thought was really interesting. He told the stories for this version. Story number 1 is totally made up. Story number 2 is one that his friend told him, or verse 2 is a separate story. His friend told him about American singer-songwriter Michael Hurley singing hog songs to summon a taxidermied hog head to dance. And then story number 3 is his grandfather's earliest memory, which is probably the best. I mean, it's sad, but it's probably the most interesting. His mother put him on her back and climbed out of a second floor window and down a rose trellis with the thorns cutting her skin as they escaped Houston for Louisiana. And I think like the main message of this song, and or both of these songs, this piece that he's written and continues to evolve, is just like the depth of everyday memories, all the things that make up our lives. And so it really hit me and I loved it. So here's Cuero Doots by Buch Meek.
Sweet. I love any song that doesn't resolve the last chord whatsoever. That's always a favorite of mine. No, that's super cool. I think it's just like a really simple arrangement that's mixed really well. You'll hear, especially like I would say everyone should grab a pair of stereo headphones and listen to that, just because it's all mixed really well in a spatial sense. So you've got the sort of rhythmic guitar on the right and some of these really fun like higher guitar fills and textures on the left that work really well together, and some of the keys that come in there at different places. Overall, I think this is put together super cool, and I think his voice kind of has that. It has like a little folksiness to it, and sort of it feels very natural, and it works with the sort of storytelling style that he did with this. I think it's super cool. I love it.
Yeah, agreed. Love it. What's your first track up?
Yeesh. Meat section number 2 of our sandwich.
I'm the bread, man. I'm the bread.
You're the bread. I will be the bottom bread. But we've got a couple middle sections to get through. So the COVID pandemic, I think, and the lockdowns that came out of it, I think, was a catalyst for a lot of really good music. I think a good music historian should sit down and write a whole book about the boom of really good songwriting that came about out of the whole isolation and all of the extra free time that was, birthed by the pandemic in 2020. And the band I'm going to play next, called The Smile, is one of those COVID creations, consisting of Radiohead legends Thom Yorke and Jonny Greenwood, alongside English jazz and prog rock drummer Tom Skinner. The Smile surprised the world with a set of brand new music at the 2021 Glastonbury Music Festival, which unfortunately was live streamed due to the pandemic. But they went on to release an album called A Light for Attracting Attention in May of 2022, which peaked at number 5 on the UK album charts. And the song I'm going to play for you, called Wall of Eyes, it was released along with another track called Bending Hectic on November 13th of 2023, off of an upcoming full-length album slated for January 26th. Features a time signature that somewhat dizzyingly alternates between measures of 4/4 and 6/4, which could also be viewed as 2 measures of 5/4, but I think the 4/4 and 6/4 is what they intended. You be the judge of that. Some really beautiful soaring strings over some very simple plucked rhythm on an acoustic guitar. A very cavernous and yet sparse set of percussion, and a dynamic that Stereogum described as one that starts out soft and quiet and builds into a splendorous stomping beast. So without any further ado, please enjoy Wall of Eyes by The Smile.
Really great. Really great.
Fun, right?
Man. Yeah, I love it. I mean, Thom Yorke, classic, like knows how to set the environment. He's just, he paints those sonic, landscapes, that overwhelming reverb on all the vocals.
Yeah.
I also love like the little laugh soundtrack in the middle, and then
you have him going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the one side of your head like the entire time, which kind of gives this like sense of unease. I don't know, it felt to me like hearing a Radiohead track for the first time, like back in high school. It really felt like that. I hadn't heard this at all before. Did you know that this existed?
I don't think I did. I feel like I may have, like, I don't know. I definitely don't remember listening to this track. So
it just came up on my algorithm and like on shuffle, and I was like, this sounds like
surprised I haven't. No, but I mean, I think Thom Yorke, he has like I said, he has a signature. Like everything sounds like everything kind of sounds like a Radiohead song once Thom Yorke's involved. But what was he collaborated with? Who was the other than Jonny Greenwood? Who did he bring in?
It's this guy who who's like mostly known as a jazz drummer,
Yeah.
by the name of Tom Skinner. He's a British guy. He's played with a bunch of bands. He started a few bands, but mostly does kind of like psychedelic and progressive jazz and
Nice.
some prog rock stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, the drum work there definitely stood out as
Yeah.
unique flavor.
Super cool.
Cool album artwork as
Yeah,
well.
for sure. Yeah, I definitely want to. Can't wait for the full thing to come out at
Yeah.
the end of the month.
Well, speaking of COVID, brands with their genesis in COVID, the second track I'm going to play is a track from a band that, if there were an award for the least Googleable band, it might go to the band At, spelled literally with the at sign, like at gmail.com. I cannot find them online unless I go to Spotify first and click out to their social. There's no way to find them. Uproxx described them as the combination of folk music, hyperpop, and terrible SEO. The most inconvenient possible band name. But what they lack in Google ability, I think I just made that word up, they make up for in musical ability. At is Victoria Rose from your beloved town of Baltimore, and her collaborator Stone Philipchak from up the road in Philly. And they put this album together mostly over iMessage during COVID. Started collaborating in 2020. They originally released this album in 2021, but it was re-released last year on Car Park Records, which I guess got it into more people's orbit. I first heard about it last year. And last year, their album Mind Palace Music, I loved it so much that I even bought the vinyl. I have it sitting right here. I don't even have a record player, but it's definitely one of the first ones I'm going to be putting on there. It's got this, I just want to show you this. It's got this beautiful orange vinyl. You got to check this out. Look at this. That's really cool.
We love a colored vinyl.
Absolutely. Right? I know. I'm a sucker for an orange vinyl.
I just tried Googling them and it's absolutely impossible.
No, you can't. But if you search Spotify, you can find, just type in the at sign. But the band themselves described their music as hyper folk, and the last album definitely veered more folk, but this new one definitely veers more hyper. The EP they just released this week is titled "Are You There, God? It's Me At," and my favorite track is definitely the title track. Yeah, I mean, it's just great. I mean, I don't even want to try to describe it. It's unpredictable. The one thing I would say is that one of the things that I think that's descriptive of their music, someone described it as their music is something that could be mistaken for a Beatles demo tape at times. They are really, really good at these vocal harmonies. It sounds almost like old, like 70s tracks, and then they just break into something that never would have been written in the 70s. So I'm gonna go ahead and play At Are You There, God? It's Me At.
That's it.
That's it.
Amazing.
Like a pop psalm.
And it just stops. No, it's great. I think
you got to love those 5/4 breakdowns that end the song.
With our second song that may or may not have featured something in 5/4. the first acapella bit, I was getting like, like those later Beach Boys albums when they kind of went off the rails, like that. But if they were somehow able to do more drugs than they were doing at the time, would be hard. But yeah, no, I think like it's a theme that we keep coming back to on this show. It's like just good arranging and just finding ways to like put things into sonic space where it's complex, but it's not overwhelming. Like each individual element stands on its own and is plays a role. There's nothing really wasted in that track. I think it's super, super cool. But
on the arrangement side, reading the bio of the band, one of the things that Victoria said, she sent all these demos over iMessage to Stone, and originally he would send stuff back and he was like, I don't know if I even like this, but then it grew on her and realized something new is possible. But like this idea of like a seed of song, and then someone else arranges it in a totally different way. But there's a chemistry there that is pretty incredible. I will definitely put one other track on at the end of the episode in the sort of wrap up songs. And
it shows that a song doesn't need to have like a chorus verse turn chorus verse whatever sort of format. Like you can just be like, I have this little snippet of an idea and I'm just going to smash it in with this other snippet of an idea, and it works.
Absolutely.
I like it. All right, so for our last track of the day, our last slice of bread in our sandwich, we are going to travel back in time a bit, to April of 1984. I know you remember it well. Uh, the Scottish art rock band The Blue Nile released their first album, A Walk Across the Rooftops. After a struggle to gain attention, and several band members, including their drummer, left the band early on, the remaining three decided not to replace their drummer, and to build their sound in a way that didn't rely on traditional percussion or guitar work, but made use of a lot of various drum machines and synthesizers. And the resulting sound is, as Rolling Stone noted at the time, an effortless flow of acoustic and electronic sounds with nary a hook. The Blue Nile flows across a calm, clean, misty landscape where complex technology is integrated with palpable emotional component. The music falls outside of the known categories, presenting a seductive world for the receptive. And here is the title track from that first album from 1984. I have been listening to this song obsessively for like 6 months. I think it is so cool. Keep an ear out for a beautifully forceful bass line that you cannot miss. Some, again, stunning strings that alternate between some pizzicato and some bowed passages. And singer Paul Buchanan's deceptively simple but somewhat aching lyricism and vocal technique. So here is A Walk Across the Rooftops from the Blue Nile.
It's truly epic.
Right?
It's really gorgeous.
Love it.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if you read some of the lore behind this album, it's fascinating, and how they like basically a bunch of them were saying like, yeah, we're just trying to figure out what sounds we could make with just the three of us, and using a bunch of like weird, very new technology at the time, and playing instruments that they were not particularly good at and stuff, and then having they actually got a record deal, and we're able to mix in some studio elements as well. And I think
I mean,
came
less
together.
less is more. I mean,
Yeah,
the sparse drums, pulling in those different instruments at like just the right time. Like when the piano came in there at that section, I just was like, I was not expecting that. I was familiar with the Blue Nile, but I hadn't listened to that track before.
They've become definitely one of my favorite bands as of the last couple of years, for sure.
I feel like the 80s gets like a cliche. Like people think of 80s music as like very cliche. I mean, there is some, I feel like the common thread, there's this over earnestness to some of the like vocals that comes across, and like that I mean, I love it, but it's, that there's a lot of 80s music that doesn't get listen. I don't know. There's 80s gets very cliche, pigeonholed into a cliche a lot of times.
For sure. Especially out of the UK, though, it's sort of like in the post-punk era, when people were trying to find like what the next sound was. A lot of sad, rainy music that took a bunch of different forms. This was definitely one of those post-punk creations. I've been getting into a lot of that, like late '80s, kind of avant-garde art rock stuff.
Nice.
And there's some really cool stuff in that time period.
Nice. So, I guess the sound which we're gonna branch out a little bit this year, maybe play some older tracks. I feel like most of what we did last season was newer stuff, with some exceptions. We definitely played some when we did John Coltrane this section. Right.
But yeah, I would love to like mix in some of the more historic stuff that I've been finding. And as well, definitely keeping the spotlight on this new stuff that's coming out, and definitely want to mix in a few more interviews this year with artists as their stuff is coming out as well, like we were able to do a little bit last year. So definitely looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, we already are getting some lined up, so excited to share that with you.
Absolutely. Sweet. So we will feel free to continue this playlist on Spotify. We will link the rest of the playlist on our if you're watching on YouTube. Definitely some songs that JD and I have been jamming out to for the last few months while we've been away, and we'll present that without comment right now.
Awesome. Well, great to be with you.
Absolutely.
See you next week.
thanks for everyone for tuning in. Please, like JD said, leave us any suggestions you might have for future content, or anyone you'd like us to maybe even bring on for an interview. We're always happy for suggestions. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
See you next week.